Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Bhavani Shankar, and today we'll be discussing Unit 3 Sources of Demographic Data. In order to understand the demographical situation of any given society on this planet, it is necessary for us to understand or to know the size of the population, the number of births, the number of deaths, and so on. So, in order to make the analysis of this demographical situation, we require the information about the population size, its distribution, information about the population processes like fertility, mortality, and migration. At the same time, we need to have the information about population structure as well as its characteristics. The main sources of demographical data are population census, vital registrations, and we also have sample surveys. So we'll be discussing about population census in detail. The word census has been derived from the Latin word censere, which means to assess. According to the New International Webster's Dictionary, it defines that an official count of the people of a country or district, including age, sex, employment, and so on, my dear friends. Population census is the most important primary source of demographical data for any country or in any country. It is a rich reservoir of information about the human society, its composition, and so on. So this information is going to help the government in designing the policies or in order to address the issues or problems which are there in that particular state or country. According to United Nations, population census is defined as the total process of collecting, compiling, evaluating, analyzing, publishing demographic, economic, and social data pertaining to a country at a specific period of time. It says that a total process of collecting, compiling, evaluating, analyzing, publishing demographic, economic, and social data pertaining to all the people in a particular country at a specific period of time. The modern concept of population census not only includes the data of age, sex, marital status, rural urban composition, but also tries to provide very useful information about the social and economical condition of the people. So when this census has been started, so we can trace the recording of the information of the people way back to the Egypt civilization, Roman civilization, Babylonians, Indian, as well as China. In India, during the period of Ashoka, during the period of Ashoka, census operations were often undertaken. Kautilya's Ardhashastra says that we need to collect the information about the people, the population statistics, so that we can make the policies for the purpose of taxation. So, how many people are there? How what they are doing? So that this kind of information is going to help the government or help the king to collect the taxes from the people, my dear friends. So we can see that it's not a new concept, but it is a age old concept of gathering the information using it for specific purpose. The modern concept of population census took its shape in the 17th as well as in the 18th century, my dear friends. In India, the first population census in the as per the modern concept was carried out in the year 1872. The next census was conducted in all the parts of the country during the year 1881. Since then, it has become regular that in our country, for every 10 years, we are going to gather the information about all the people across the country and publish that in the form of census reports. And even now, we are following the 2011 census because 2021 census has not yet arrived because of the corona issue, my dear friends. The preparation for ensuing census reports or gathering the information, the government is going to, or the census of India is going to make a listing at the first phase. How many houses are there? We are going to conduct a housing census during the month of April and September. For example, if it is supposed to come in the year 2021, so in the year 2020, during the period of April to September, we are going to make a listing of all the houses across the state. So for this, there will be appointment of principal census officers, district census officers, and charge officers, and so on. And these people are given the task of gathering the information from all the households across the district or across the country, my dear friends. And most of the directorates or all the directorates across the country, they are going to provide the training to all the officers in the state, district, as well as Tahsil headquarters so that they can gather the information. After completion of training of principal census officers, district census officers, the training will be given to the enumerators and supervisors. So here we are going to start this process at least 1 year well in advance in order to gather the information. Now let us discuss about the silent features of population census. The first one is the census will be conducted only by the government. No other institution has the legitimate authority to conduct the census. The census is conducted after every 10 years. The census covers the entire country or the population who are residing in a definite territory or a geographical area. The census operations will be completed within the specific dates. It is organized and conducted by the government through Census Commission of India. For conducting the census, a reference period is determined by the Census Commission at the point of time. It is in principle, it is universal in nature. We cannot omit any person or reject any person, or we cannot try to gather any duplicate information. A household or a family is treated as a unit in this census data. However, in large census operations, migrant individuals, homeless persons are also enumerated in this. Before starting the census operations, some preliminary steps will be taken, like preparation of schedules, list of households, training of enumerators, and so on, my dear friends. The census data are published for circulation so that each and every section or each and every individual will get the information so that they can use for their purpose. For example, it can be used by the insurance companies so that they can motivate the people or design the policies as per the requirement, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about the uses of census reports. First one, it is going to provide primary population data in relation with age, sex, marital status, economical activities, occupation, migration, literacy, so on. We are going to get the complete information about the population. At the same time, it will also try to throw the light on the socio-economical problems of the people who are staying in that particular area. It may be about status of women, the sex ratio, the density of population, literacy levels, standard of living, and so on, my dear friends. So this kind of information about age, sex, marital status, then about the social economical problems, this data is going to help the researchers, administrators, planners, and social organizations to suggest as well as adopt measures to make the policies and also to address the issues which are there in that particular geographical area. Now, the next one is it is going to help the insurance companies to construct the life tables. It helps this data helps for us for the people to conduct sample surveys and so on. And the data is also going to help the election commission for demarcation of the constituencies, allocation of seats for municipal corporation, state legislatures, and parliament of a country. Population data is one of the bases of allocation of resources between the center and the state in a federal country. This can also guide the city planners in terms of planning measures for the future growth of cities, in terms of housing, transportation, flyovers, sanitation, water facilities, and so on. So these are the uses of this population census. Now, when we go for this population census, my dear friends, we are going to have certain problems like it requires men, it requires material, it requires money. Whenever we want to go for gathering the information about the entire population, my dear friends, we require three things in terms of operation. One is men, second one is material, and the third one is money, my dear friends. They require huge manpower and money because we have to gather the information from all the people across the country. And next one is in census is not a continuous process. If it is a continuous process, we would have the staff who are trained in gathering the information. But this process is conducted usually once in every 10 years. So we require ad hoc body or people who can gather the information for us. So we require a lot of money in training the staff for gathering the information. The second one is sometimes the enumerators often interpret the terms used in the schedule in their own way, despite they are supplied with the guidelines by the Census Commission. Sometimes the enumerators are required to go from door to door to gather the information. This takes plenty of time and it is also a monotonous work. Sometimes the enumerators may be dishonest in terms of filling the schedules. Sometimes they may sit at home and they may try to give the fake information or false information on their own. Like in some areas, some people may be reluctant to provide the information because of fear that it may be used for some other purposes. I'll give one example. There are some people who have more than two children. But when the enumerators go to gather the information, at the time, the people may say that I have only two children because the government of India is going to provide certain benefits for the children, for the government employees' children. If the couple has only two children, if they have more than two children, then they are forced to forego that benefits, my dear friends. So they may think that the information may be used for a certain purpose and they may lose certain benefits out of fear. Some people may not provide the rightful information. The next one is if the households are illiterate or the enumerator is unable to convince the people saying that the information and which is provided will be maintained secrecy by the government or by the law. At the time, the people may not give the information. The household schedule pertaining to the census data may not have the columns about the family members who have migrated to the other countries. That means we may not have the rightful information. And in the developing countries, in majority of the developing countries, when we talk about the age of the people or the members of the household, we are going to have the age groups like 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 10 to 15 years, 15 to 20, and so on, which is going to have a gap of at least 5 years. So this creates a problem for the enumerators to fill up the age column, which makes them to make a guesswork, my dear friends. So you're not going to get the right information in terms of age if you are going to use this kind of columns, my dear friends. Now, so what kind of methods we are going to use to gather the information in this survey method? There are two methods, my dear friends. There are two methods for the enumerators to gather the information from the people. One is de facto method. One is de facto method. In the de facto method, the enumerator will gather the information from the person where he finds them. That means if the enumerator is going on the road, at the time, if he finds a person on the road, he is going to gather the information then and there itself at that time. This method is also known as present in the area method, my dear friends. Okay, but this method Actually, we used to utilize this method to gather the information. But unfortunately, this method may give rise to duplication of data. For example, think I'm at Secunderabad railway station and enumerator approach me and have given all the information about myself. And again, I went from Secunderabad to Nampally railway station. I traveled through MMTS, and after reaching there, there is one more enumerator, and I also gave the information even to that person. There are chances that there may be duplicacy of data in this de facto method, my dear friends. Second one is that because we are not going to door information, some of the people may be omitted. That's the reason the government of India started using this detour method. In this de-jure method, the enumerator is supposed to go to each and every individual's place of residence. Means he goes to the individual's house, knocks the door, and he gathers the information when the people are at their home. So that each and every house, each and every person in the house will be um, um, uh, or the information will be gathered from the people, my dear friends. So no individual will be omitted in this, and there are chances that there'll be less duplication of data in this DJO method, my dear friends. Actually, this de facto method was used in India till 1931. Later on, we started using this de jure method, going to the people and gathering the information. Now, let us discuss about vital registration. Vital, vital registration or vital statics represent the important events which take in one's life, such as birth, death, marriage, divorce, and so on, which are going to change the civil status, which may change the civil status, and that may happen to the individual during one's life. The birth, death, marriage, and so on are called as vital events. And this information, if these are registered, then we call them as vital statistics, my dear friends. We call them as vital statistics. The create of introducing the system of registration of births, deaths, and marriages under civil authorities was introduced in Peru by the church. Later on in the 19th century, this concept of registering the births, deaths, and so on was adopted by several countries in Europe as well as in South America. This system was adopted by civil registrations with the responsibility for the registration of vital events rested with the national government. Today, the registration of vital events has become a system adopted by almost all the nations across the globe. It has become a continuous, compulsory, and permanent system of recording vital statistics which are linked with the population in that particular geographical area. Most of the developed nations, such as Japan, UK, USA, have now very reliable and dependable registration systems. In these countries, registration of births, deaths are necessary for various purposes, for including, for example, like school admissions for the children, entry into the jobs, legal matters, and so on. The system of registration of vital events was introduced by Britishers more than 100 years ago. An act was passed in the Lok Sabha in the year 1969, known as the Birth and Death Registration Act. And failure to register births and deaths is punishable under this law, my dear friends. So, for vital registration, there are there are four sources for registration of secondary sources of demographical data. One is vital registration. In this vital registration, we are going to register about births, deaths, marriage, divorce, and so on, my dear friends. So we go to the municipal corporation of a town when the child is born or when a person is expired, and we get the data registered there. So this helps us to provide birth certificate, death certificate, and so on, my dear friends. The next one is population registers. This is another secondary source of collecting population data. A number of European and Asian countries like Belgium, Sweden, Korea, Israel, and so on try to maintain a permanent population registers for administrative and legal purposes. It contains the names, addresses, age, sex, and so on of each and every individual in that country, my dear friends. The population registers help in verifying the correctness of the census figures during that particular year. The third one is other records. Um, there are other records which are secondary sources developed in the developing countries, or sorry, developed countries. They maintain population records to meet social security schemes like unemployment insurance and allowances, old age pensions, maternity allowances, and so on, my dear friends. If you see in Telangana, we have this Raitu Bandhu scheme. That means for all the farmers, the government is providing input subsidy or lump sum amount so that it can be used for doing the agriculture work. So the government is going to have the information about all the farmers based on their land holding so that they can use the benefits to the people. At the same time, they also have the list of all the people who are physically challenged or old age so that they can be provided with pensions and so on. So all this we call it as other records, my dear friends. In some countries, insurance companies try to maintain the life tables related to births and deaths along with population trends. So this is going to be available from electoral risk, then income tax payers, telephone subscribers, and so on, my dear friends. Then the fourth one is international publications. United Nations also publish about different countries' demographical data in the form of United Nations Demographic Yearbook and Statistical Yearbook. The World Health Organization also publishes a monthly journal on epidemiological and vital records which give data on public health and mortality of different countries. So the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, in its Human Development Report, and the World Bank in its World Development Report published annually demographic data relating to population growth, projections, fertility, mortality, health, and so on for all the countries across the world, my dear friends. So, why do we require these vital registrations? Because of they are important because of multiple reasons. Let us discuss about them. Vital registrations, records of births provide a legal proof of one's identity, civil status, age, nationality, and so on, which in turn will be useful to exercise a wide variety of rights. It may be civil functions, it may be for education, insurance, family allowances, and so on, my dear friends. The death records provide legal evidence needed to claim the inheritance of property, insurance on deceased person, rights of the surviving spouse to remarry, and so on. The death records are going to help the people, the children. If any person is deceased, then the children, if they are going to get the death registered, then they are going to get the certificate so that they can get the property onto their name and so on. The vital records also play an important role in the administrative, public health field, social and economic development for meeting the goals of the welfare state. For administrative purpose, birth records are useful for planning and providing public health programs both for pre and postnatal, including mother and child immunization, vaccination, and so on. The individual death records provide useful indicators of the existence of infectious and epidemic diseases, which will immediate control measures. Uh, sorry, existence of infectious and epidemic disease, which can help us in controlling uh, the disease. Like we can take the measures to control them. And these vital records can also be useful for providing public safety measures, accident prevention measures, social security, and so on, my dear friends. In India, the coverage of vital registration still remains unsatisfactory. Do you know why? Because majority of the population still resides in the rural areas and most of the people do not get the birth or deaths registered, my dear friends. Now let us go for sample surveys. Whenever we talk about surveys, remember that you're going to gather the information from all the people in that specific geographical area. When we go for sample surveys, we are going to take a few people. We are going to take the data from the few people. We are going to study them and we are going to apply the results to the entire population. Then we call it as sample surveys. The demographical sample surveys are yet another means for gathering the information from the population. In this, information is collected only from the selected people or an elected sample of the population. And the conclusions drawn will be applied to the entire population, like even because the census data is available for once in every 10 years. That means there is a huge gap and there can be a number of issues in the state or in the country. So in order to study the variations, in order to study the problems, my dear friends, we go for sample surveys, my dear friends. In some countries, my dear friends, NSS, National Sample Surveys, will conduct the sample surveys, my dear friends, based on random sampling or stratified random sampling. When we talk about stratified random sampling, first we are going to stratify the population. It may be based on gender, it may be based on religion, it may be based on rural urban differences, or it may be based on education levels of the individuals. Like first, we are going to stratify the people and then select the respondents randomly for our study. So we may use random sampling or else we may use stratified random sampling for selecting the respondents for our study, my dear friends. For the sample surveys, because the sample is small, we require less human power. We don't require huge manpower because when we go for surveys, we are supposed to gather the information from all the population across the country. Whereas in sample surveys, only limited people are selected for the study. So we require less human power, first one. Second one, we require less training or small training for the staff. Then we are going to prepare a questionnaire for a specific study. So the questionnaire may also be smaller, my dear friends, because the questionnaires are related only to a specific topic. So the size of the questionnaire may be less. So the people are requires less training or small training, my dear friends. The next one is we also require less time to gather the information and we also require less money. It is less expensive because we gather only from a small portion of population. And once the data is gathered from the respondents, we are going to tabulate the information and then analyze the data and we are going to publish it. And it can be used for specific purposes, my dear friends. It takes less time. It is less expensive, my dear friends. Okay. So there must be a question from your side. Sir, when you're going to take the information, gather the information from entire population, you're going to get the appending information. Is it possible? Is it possible that we get the same results even doing the study on the same on a smaller portion? To the larger extent, we are going to get the right information as we are going to get the information when you're going to do the study at a larger scale, my dear friends. For that reason, we are going to do on a smaller population. It will be easy for us to administer the research process, my dear friends, because the population is very, very limited or small, my dear friends. Now let us study about the usefulness of this sample surveys. First one is it is cheaper. Second one, in case of failure of vital registration, these sample surveys are going to provide reliable data about the births, deaths, and so on. Sample surveys are conducted by specially trained interviewers. So we are going to prepare the questionnaires well in advance. we are going to plan our research thoroughly, and we are going to gather the information which helps us to study in depth about the population in a specific geographical area on a specific topic, my dear friends. So these are the three benefits of using this sample surveys. In India, in India, the sample surveys are conducted by National Sample Survey Organization. Then we also have um, National Family and Health Service conducted by International Institute of Population Science at Mumbai. Like we have different agencies in India which are also going to do the sample surveys, and they are going to publish the data. But it also has its own limitations, my dear friends. Here, it is highly subjective, as it is impossible to arrive at different data with different samples of the same population. With different samples of the same population, it may be subjective, sometimes in terms of selecting the respondents and so on. So there may be errors in terms of coverage, classification, and sampling of population data. As the survey requires many surveyors, we may not have sufficient, efficient, and sincere surveyors, my dear friends. It may be subject to large errors. If the information in the sample do not cooperate, the survey will not help us in getting accurate results. So these are the limitations of sample surveys, my dear friends. Now let us discuss about population registers in detail. The system of maintaining population registers was found in small countries in the world such as Sweden, Finland, Belgium, Taiwan, and Korea. In India, the National Population Register (NPR) is being prepared at the village, sub-town, sub-district, district, state, as well as at the national level under the provision of the Citizenship Act 1955 and the Citizenship, Registration of Citizens, and Issue of National Identity Cards Rules 2003. A usual resident is defined for the purpose of NPR as a person who is residing in a geographical area for the past 6 months or more and is willing to stay in a specific geographical area for the next 6 months or more. Then that person is treated as the resident as per the purpose of national population registers, my dear friends. So till here, we have studied about the importance of surveys, sample surveys, and so on. Now let us move to the next lesson. Pre-Malthusian theory and Malthusian theories. Let us discuss about the pre-Malthusian theories. We have various views of writers, thinkers, philosophers, and social reformers on multi-dimensional problems of the population size and growth. The concerns of the growing population and the need to sustain increasing number continues from the ancient period to the present day. It was in the 18th century that a profound change was seen in the intellectual climate. We started gathering the information of the people about their social economical condition and started formulating various theories to study the changing attitudes and how the population is going to influence the society at large. Thomas Robert Malthus has been customarily given a place of top honor in the history of demography. He is regarded as the first to develop consistent and comprehensive population theory concerning economical conditions. His writings has a great influence on economic theory as well as and population. Sorry, influence on economic theory and population. He developed his ideas on population, mainly his essay on the principles of population, published in the year 1798. This essay on population is considered as the important landmark in the development of population studies. Let us discuss about the pre-Malthusian theories. The first one is Chinese thought. Chinese writers since the time of Confucius, have theorized that if the population is too small in comparison to land, it would remain uncultivated and lead to default in the payment of taxes. On the other hand, they thought that if the population is too huge, then it may lead to economic hardships. Thus, their thought implies a primitive notion of optimum population. The Chinese thinkers advocated an ideal proportion between the land and population. They held that the government is primarily responsible for maintaining such a portion by moving from overpopulated areas to underpopulated areas. So, our duty is to move the population from overpopulated areas to the areas where they are underpopulated. The Chinese thinkers has also paid attention to another aspect of the population, that is the checks of population growth. That they observed that mortality due to the insufficient food supply, wars acted as a check to population growth. The Chinese doctrine related population protection and standard of living and advocated an ideal proportion between the population and the agriculture. And if you see in terms of Greek thought, the Greek thinkers were more concerned with the formulation of policies and rules for the population rather than having clearly stated population doctrines. Plato and Aristotle were interested in the question of population size in the context of city state. To them, optimum size of population was that in which man's potentialities could be fully developed and realized. If the population is huge at the time, their requirements cannot be satisfied, so that the person will not be physically and mentally grown. That means that population cannot be properly utilized, my dear friends. They will not be able to utilize their potentialities to the fullest. Neither the state can use the potentialities of its people because they're not properly or well trained, my dear friends. They viewed that this was possible when the population was large enough to be economically self sufficient and capable of defending itself. But in most of the areas, too large for constitutional government. Plato stated in his work the laws that if the highest good was to be achieved, the city state should have only 5,040 citizens, and land, houses, and property should be equally divided among them. He felt that too many people would lead to enormity, undermine democracy on one hand, at the same time, it would prevent an adequate division of labor. And they also recommended certain measures to maintain the desired size of population, like giving rewards, incentives, giving advices to the young to achieve a certain family size, and so on. And they also resorted, or they also suggested for immigration if required. We also required to import the peoples or allow the people to come into their geographical area if required, my dear friends. And in case if the population is more, my dear friends, we need to take the measures like infanticide, encourage late marriages. These were suggested by Plato. As an early exponent of the doctrine, Plato felt that the quality in humans is more important than the quantity of population. Aristotle discussed that the population problems in his book Politics. He was less specific on the matter of optimum population. He viewed that excess population would give rise to the problems of poverty as well as other social evils. He also advocated that we need to take certain measures to control the population as suggested by Plato, my dear friends. Now, let us discuss about the Roman thought. Roman writers paid less attention to the population as compared to the Greeks. In Roman Empire, Julius Caesar, Julius and Augustus Caesar have advocated these doctrines. The population increase was a boon for them as they required soldiers. The main intention of the Caesar was to invade the nearby civilizations and expand their kingdom. The Romans were dreaming to conquer the entire world. So, in order to conquer the entire world, they require more population to uh, fight for them. They require soldiers for the military purpose. So, for them, it was a boon. The population increase was a boon for them, it was an advantage for them. Roman philosophers like Caesar, Seneca, Marcus, and so on were in favor of large population. Sierra noted that population growth was a means to replace war casualties because when we go on war, there some of the soldiers may be put to death, some of the soldiers may be handicapped permanently. So obviously there will be shortage of soldiers. So the increasing population can be used to replace the vanished soldiers or wounded soldiers and so on. And all the writers of this period in the Roman civilization, they said that the primary function of the marriage was to produce as many citizens as possible so that they can help in um, fulfilling the dreams of the kingdom, my dear friends. So the king used to provide the incentives to the couples who are going to have more children and tax the people who have not gone for marriage, or the taxes who are huge. So the parents used to force their children to go for marriage. Like these kind of policies were introduced by the Roman civilization. If we see at the Indian thought, my dear friends, Indian religious books and writings helps us to understand the views of Indian people. The main sources are the four Vedic literature, Upanishads, Puranas, epics like Ramayana, Mahabharata, as well as the Smritis. The writings of Kautilya reflect the thoughts on population which are mentioned or reflecting in his book named Arthashastra. Kautilya studied problems of migration, qualitative and quantitative aspects of population, public health, and public administration. He emphasized that the desirability of a large population for military and economical power. He wrote that although an area may contain too many or too few people for its resources, the latter, few people are a greater evil because the resources will not be properly utilized and the kingdom may not have sufficient people to protect the land, my dear friends. The religious outlook in the ancient India favored population increase. It prohibited any kind of measures to check population increase as the birth of children was viewed as a divine gift and any measure to keep a check was considered as a sin, my dear friends. If we see the views in the medieval period, in the 5th century, during the period from the fall of Roman Empire to the 15th century, the Christianity has influenced the demographical thought. Early and medieval Christian thinkers considered questions on population from a moral and ethical standpoint. They favored a large population and condemned polygamy, divorce, abortion, infanticide, and child exposure. On the other side, they also preached celibacy, sex repression, and unmarried living. They believed that floods, droughts, epidemics would act as a natural checks to keep a check of the excess population growth. They favored high birth rate for the survival of the human race. During this medieval period, it is noteworthy population doctrine emerged in the work of Khaldun, an Arab author of the 14th century. The views of Muslim authors on population resemble those of Christian authors. It held that a densely settled population was conducive to higher levels of living as it permitted the greater division of labor, effective use of resources, and provided military and political security. Now, let us discuss during the Renaissance period. It was during the 15th and 18th century period. It was only during a short period of time. This period witnessed the emergence of nation state, new scientific discoveries, exploration of new territories, and rapid growth of trade, the gradual decline of the medieval feudal system, and the development of early capitalism took its place. All this led to the basis for the Industrial Revolution. These events of the Renaissance period had a combined influence on the economic and demographical thought, which is explained in the views of mercantilists and physiocrats. The influence of the events of Renaissance period led to the rise of merchantiles. The people used to move from one place to the other place in order to do trade and commerce. This led to the link between the medieval period and the modern period. And the main important features of this was increasing national wealth and power through trade. So that means they want to have the connections between different states and nations so that they can import the goods and export the goods so that it will increase their economical wealth. And it also gives rise to the more power, my dear friends. At the same time, the state will be prepared for war. Okay. Keeping at the same time, it also tries to keep down the cost of goods through the exploitation of labor. Through the exploitation of labor. So these are the three features of this mercantilism. You can see that at the initial stage, the Britishers, the foreigners, they entered into India to do trade and commerce, and later on, they conquered us and they overruled us for years together. And at the time, they have exploited the Indian people. They have exploited our resources. And that is how they have become very, very powerful at the time, my dear friends. So for the mercantiles, in order to implement an economic policy, for them, their important asset is the size of population. So they favored high birth rates for economical and political gains. They adopted measures to increase population growth by encouraging marriages, fertility, immigration, in migration, nothing but, and preventing outward migration. If any person wants to move away from the country, that means there will be a loss for them. So they have discouraged or they started preventing emigration, nothing but out migration. And mercantilist ideas have dominated economical thinkers, especially in the Europe during the 17th and 18th century. That we can see in the writings of Botero. The strength of a state is found in its population and predominance of the industry over agriculture. So any state is going to be powerful because of two aspects. One is the mechanization or nothing but the industries over agriculture, and the other one is the size of the population. So the increase in population will manifest itself, okay, will use the opportunity. But at the same time, it also has its own problems, like it may lead to poverty, it may lead to wars, it may lead to epidemics, and so on, my dear friends. Then if you see the physiocrats, it evolved in France in the middle of 18th century. They were expressions of a reaction against the mercantilist ideas and policies. These people have neglected, means mercantilists have neglected agriculture, and they were enthusiastic only for the acquisition of gold and silver, that too only through doing trade and commerce, my dear friends. But these people, physiocrat school, was that the land was the source of all wealth. Hence, they felt that it was necessary to emphasize the importance of agriculture and internal tax reforms. They did not favor population increase at the cost of standard of living. They want to increase the population, but not at the cost of standard of living. They favored population increase only in relation with the expansion of agriculture production. The fundamental concept is to the fundamental concept according to Guide and Risk was the natural order, which emphasized on the role of land in production. Population growth was favored as it was possible to expand agriculture production, which in turn could support the increasing population, my dear friends. Now let us discuss the scientific ideas of Godwin, Grand Prix, and so on. In the 18th century, the French Revolution instilled ever higher confidence among writers like Godwin, a philosopher, a social reformer, and conduct, a mathematician, a philosopher, sorry, and Condas, a mathematician philosopher. These are the two writers who considered Godwin had boundless faith in science and declared that scientific progress would multiply the food supply to the point where a man would have to work only a part of his time to satisfy all his needs. He did not think that abundance thus created would lead to overpopulation, since man's reason was strong enough to curb sexual desire and procreation. He felt that poverty and vices of the society were mainly due to the inequalities imposed by the social institutions. The period of the 15th and 18th century saw not a significant development of views of population, but also witnessed the beginning of the systematic measurement and analysis of population trends. John Grant, who was very active participant in the intellectual life in London during the mid 17th century, is regarded as the father of demography. He carried out a numerical analysis of births and deaths and arrived at a set of limited generalizations about mortality, fertility, migration, and marriage as interrelated population processes. He obtained data from the bills of mortality, which were weekly reports of burials and christening compiled by parish clerks. From this data, he was able to discover numerical regularities and uniformity in vital events. Brown's book, Natural and Political Observations, made upon the bills of mortality, compiled and analyzed data from the bills of mortality. It was the first to discern an underlying order in vital statistics. William Petty, with whom Grant collaborated, not only analyzed some of the demographical aspects dealt by Grant, but maintained that arithmetic can be applied to population, economic, and political affairs. He is honored for many heights into how statistics can be used to measure and solve the social problems of the problems and the problems of the national economy and government policy. Um, he inspired and greatly encouraged by his friend Grant's work. Petty's work, Political Arithmetic, has a substantial impact on the subsequent development of demography. Petty was concerned with population projections, the economics of urbanization, population structure, and the labor force, unemployment, underemployment, and the measures of national income. He stressed that the importance of population as human capital. He was the first to attempt a division of population and the economy into primary, secondary, and into tertiary activities. So, guys, till now, we have discussed about the pre-Malthusian theories. In the next class, we'll discuss about the Malthusian theory. We'll stop here, guys. Have a nice day.